Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about Mythic Sarkareth, the last boss of the raid, and we're going to be breaking it down into bite-sized pieces so we can hopefully understand it a little bit better and talk about some of the things that I learned myself and some of the things, the tips and tricks that I learned along the way that made this a little bit easier. Because this fight is, while not being as long as most in-bosses, is definitely still very intricate, where you have like Neltharion, the previous boss right before this, that was very much about individual responsibility of doing different things at the same time. This fight is a dance of everyone doing the same thing at the same time. So everyone doing the same exact thing together as a group is very, very important, and that can be very difficult. So practicing it out it's going to take a lot of pulls. If you haven't started working on this fight yet, it's going to take some pulls to get it down, and it can be very easy to wall at specific points, but just keep going with it. Just make sure that you're practicing and paying attention to what you're doing. So we're going to go ahead and talk about this fight as a whole. I will, like I said, I'll break this down into phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 because each phase is very different from the last, and talk about the things that are most important. So phase 1 is really about micro movement. You want to be trying to optimize your damage the best you can to try to get as much damage out on Sarkareth as possible, because there are not DPS checks per se. There aren't like specific points that the boss phases based on his health. It is all about just getting in as much damage as you possibly can from the second one to the end of the fight. So the faster you can get him, or the more you can get him down in phase 1, the less you'll have to deal with at the end. Same thing for phase 2. The more you can get him down in phase 2, the less you have to deal with in phase 3. So the amount of damage you get in right from the second is going to be very important. So we want to be optimizing our damage for that. So right off the bat, this is kind of like a second into the fight. I'll pull it back just a second here. So I'll just be doing a normal opener. I like to do the gambler opener here, as well as we're going to be using lust and everything else that we have right away. We're just going to be using the standard strat for this fight. So we're not going to be talking about anything crazy or anything like that. I will say that I'm not going to be talking about doing the bombs and worrying about that mechanic specifically, because I did not worry about that myself. That was not assigned to me. It's not really great for consistent DPS specs like Elemental. It's better for high burst classes that can line up that haste buff that you can get when you go to the down phase with their big cooldowns. Not really great for Elemental per se, so we won't be talking about that here. Anyway, jumping in, we're going to try to do as much as we can to the boss as possible. Take the gate here, and then again, focus on that damage. Just don't even worry about repositioning at this point. Just trying to get as much damage in. We're going to get knocked back, and here we can just start watching our feet. And it does have some amount of time before these things land. If you can manage to wait for a instant cast spell for you to move, I'd highly suggest doing that. However, make sure it doesn't hit you. It's always worth to just not get hit by these things, because it does put a stacking dot on you that it's just going to do more and more damage. So we just want to make sure that's not going to be an issue. So this is where micro movement is going to become more and more important. So this was where my first Windrush Totem goes down, is right here. That was what is assigned to me. And here I'm going to go ahead and use my Spirit Walker's Grace and start moving out to the left side the second we see that first swirl. So the reason why I'm using Spirit Walker's Grace here specifically is we still have Lust for another 8 seconds, as you can see up here. Again, every bit of damage we can get in is going to be important. So making sure that we're optimizing Lust is going to be super important too. So make sure you're using that Spirit Walker's Grace right here. This is going to be probably the most important use of it because of that Lust timing. And now I can just keep doing my rotation as normal. We also have an Evoker playing Augmentation at this point, and he is going to use his reset during phase 1. If you have an Evoker, you definitely want them to be using that reset for that movement speed for most people, but for us at Spirit Walker's Grace, it's very, very useful, especially since we're using it very early on. I do get 2 Spirit Walker's Graces during this phase 1, and it's super helpful to do so. Here's where we're clearing our first debuff that we need to get rid of, which is the fire one. We're going to all stand in the Searing Breath. This is where you absolutely need to be pressing Astral Shift, making sure we get hit 1 time, and then step out. You don't want to get 2 ticks, though we are just mass dispelling it immediately, so it shouldn't be too much of an issue if you get a second tick, but it's just extra damage you want to try to avoid. And then moving back to where we need to be positioned, so that we're baiting these fire swirls back towards the edge of the platform. And we do want to make sure we're baiting it back here. One thing I haven't mentioned yet about that is after they finish pulsing that damage they do form one of these void zones. It's not that important in phase 1 per se, but these are permanent for the rest of the fight. And if you touch one of these at any point in the fight, you are just going to instantly die. I didn't realize what this was really trying to represent. I will be honest, when I first was doing this on like heroic and stuff like this is basically representing a hole in the platform. When you die by hitting one of these, you fall through the platform. There is no using a defensive to save yourself. You have fallen through the world and you have died. So if you touch one of these, that's it for you until you use Onk or get rezzed. So really make sure we're baiting these in good places. In phase 1, it's not going to be that big of a deal because we are all grouped together and we're putting them around the edge of the room, and we're not going to be using the edges too much for the rest of the fight. So it's not too big of a deal in phase 1, but the farther back you can bait these, the better. The reason why you don't bait them directly on the edge is because of these fire swirls during phase 1. If you get trapped with them, it's very easy to get pushed off the edge, though you can save yourself with gust of wind. So keep that in mind too. I have done that before. It doesn't happen to me here, but you can save yourself with that if you're quick on the draw. So anyway, again, this is where we're going to get another set of the swirls, and we're just going to, anytime that you can, try to line up your instant cast spells to get some more damage while you're moving, but that's not always going to be something that you can force to have happened. And then here, we're just, again, trying to get as much damage as possible. And I believe this is a set, yep, I get Disintegrate on me. For our strategy and for the normal strategy, you want to be trying to clear the rest of the raid with these Disintegrates at one time, just like you did with the fire debuff. So here, it's not time for us to clear the raid with it, so we're going to move forward, and then I'm just going to worry about trying to avoid hitting anyone else or hitting these swirls with the Disintegrate, because the rest of the raid is going to be doing it on the very last one to minimize the amount of damage, as well as the slow that the raid has to deal with until the very end of phase 1. Make sure if you move over to the right like I do, that you're not getting hit with this pulse damage. I was standing right on the edge of it. Just be very careful with that. Like I said, our Evoker did use the reset for our Spirit Walker's Grace, so now I'm using that again so that I can continue to cast while moving. Again, very, very important to keep that uptime up in phase 1. And this is typically the end of this, or this is the end of phase 1. This set of Mass Disintegrates, if I had not gotten targeted with it before, I would need to stand either in this line here or this line here, but because I didn't, I don't need to, or because I did get targeted with it, I do not need to stand in one of these lines. I still want to be using my Astral Shift just to cut back on the amount of damage that goes out here regardless. But I don't need to add to the extra damage by standing in this line because I already was targeted with it. So again, as you can see, a ton of damage goes out during this period of time. So absolutely the other point in this fight where you need to be using your Astral Shift for phase 1. And that is it for phase 1 here. Just again, focusing on your micro movements for dodging the swirls, as well as the big puddles that we're leaving behind. Micro movements are going to be everything, optimizing your instant cast spells, your Flame Shock refreshes, your Flame Shocks, I already said that already. Flame Shocks, your Frost Shocks, and your instant cast Lava Bursts are all going to be very important to maximizing your damage in phase 1, as well as your Spirit Walker's Graces. So make sure you're on top of those abilities. Spirit Walker's Grace is a godsend for phase 1. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and move into phase 2 now. At this point, the boss becomes undamageable, but you can still build Maelstrom off of them. So what I do typically here is I just try to get in a little bit more Maelstrom before we go down. You want to be tightly stacked here. I should have been over just a little bit more, but it is what it is. That's still fairly good. This was probably mine right here. It would be better if everything was on top of each other, but it's still a very good stack, all things considered. So here I'm going to run out to the side. I'm going to gather a couple of these shards here to start getting haste and movement speed. And then before this bomb expires that we all have on us, we need to be moving back to the moon, getting right in front of it as close as we can, and trying to all drop them off together so we have that still stacked up as well. So fairly good there, all things considered. I like to run behind here. You can also run around the other side if you don't like walking the tightrope there. I have fallen off doing that, so make sure that you're paying attention to yourself. If you don't like going behind it like I did, then just run in front. That's totally fine too. And fortunately, the way that it worked out for me is that it's basically perfect timing for me to come back here. But if you, as like with Ghost Wolf, it's very easy to collect these very quickly and then have plenty of time left. If you want to, you can kind of pause down here. You see like I did like a big looping run around here and come up at around 2 seconds left before I was going to die. Or you could just go up early if you want to be safe. It's up to you, but that way it allows you to milk some of this haste just a little bit more before you come up. So this is going to be the big difference between starting prog and doing this on once you've gotten phase 2 down and you're like just trying to work on killing the boss at this point. Once like phase 3 feels like you're getting close to a kill, you'll handle this a little bit differently. So in the beginning of prog, you'll basically be focusing on the empty recollections and killing the ads as quickly as possible. But once you have like the kick assignments down and the ads aren't really that much of a problem anymore, then you can switch most of your damage into Sarkareth, so that Sarkareth is at a lower health percentage going into phase 3. Like I said before at the beginning of the video, you want to be trying to get as much damage on Sarkareth as possible, and that includes right here as well. So what I'm going to be doing is focusing mainly on trying to get as much damage on Sarkareth as I possibly can. So as you can see here, I've got all this Maelstrom built up. Part of that was from what I did right before I went down going into phase 2. So I've already got maximum Maelstrom going into this. And now I'm going to start off by using my Stormkeeper going into an Elemental Blast. And now I still have 75 Maelstrom left. So I'm actually just going to go ahead and use my Lava Burst immediately after that first Elemental Blast. I didn't even bother with my, let me back this up just 1 second. Yeah, so I go ahead and use my Elemental Blast, Lava Burst, and then, or I use my Frost Shock, Lava Burst, Elemental Blast. I didn't even bother with my Surge of Power, excuse me, and I just went into just getting rid of that extra Maelstrom just to get as much damage as I could on Sarkareth, but I'm still going to be using my Chain Lightnings from my Stormkeeper to get as much damage, not only on the ads, but also feeding myself all of that Maelstrom so that I can immediately go back into that Elemental Blast. Here I do that again, I do a double Elemental Blast again, and then use my last charge of Stormkeeper on Chain Lightning. Again, it's helping with that funnel. The Stormkeeper Chain Lightning damage is still really good, even on one target, but it's even better when you have all these other targets to also feed you all of that Maelstrom that you can then funnel into Elemental Blast. So when you can do that and get that kind of value out of Stormkeeper Chain Lightning, it is worth doing it. The ads do still need to die, but it allows me to funnel more of that damage, more of that Maelstrom into Elemental Blast to get more damage on Sarkareth. Hopefully that makes sense. So as we are doing this part of it, you'll notice that we spawn bombs behind us. With these bombs, I'll back it up here. When you first get these bombs, they're going to spawn on the range group here, and it's just going to be right on top of everyone. The second you see one spawn, you need to be running out to the side to be baiting the second one over, and then stop somewhere out here where you're not going to be taking ticking damage, as well as getting stacks of what sends you into the underworld if you are not part of the bomb group. So, and plus it does do a ton of damage from that pulsing damage that it does. So as soon as both of these have been picked up by the bomb people, then you don't have to worry about it anymore, and you can reset back to where you started, essentially. So like you see, like everyone's running ahead of me, and I'm the only one that's still back here. And the reason is I don't have any good instant cast spells yet. So the second that I do, I hop on over, and then I can continue doing my my damage on Sarkareth, and then cleaving off of that. So moving into this part, so that's one ad that we've done so far. For the second set of ads, we are going to now be focusing on the empty recollection. And again, if you are doing this for prog for the first time, focus on the empty recollection instead of Sarkareth, because of the fact that it just needs to die. You don't want to leave it up for too long, but because this was our prog kill, we really wanted to get as much damage on Sarkareth. But here, I'm going to be focusing on empty recollection because of the fact that it needs to die, and we don't have all that haste, so we need to be focusing it down and trying to kill it ASAP. So here I'm going to be basically doing the same thing. I'm going to be cleaving with my Chain Lightning, but using Elemental Blast only. Not going to be doing any Earthquakes here to try to just get this empty recollection killed as quickly as possible. I should have used the Lock Gate here, but I do use Spirit Walker's Grace instead, just being able to keep up that damage. Here's where I use my third Windrush Totem, I think it is, or maybe it's my second. And we're just going to be moving out to the right again with the bomb spawning behind us, finishing off this empty recollection right as he's summoning that last set of ads. Again, we want to be focusing on that empty recollection. Now you'll see that I have Stormkeeper off cooldown now with the 2-piece proccing as well. That's a lot of Stormkeepers, and we do need to kill this last set much quicker than the previous two. So the ad damage does matter, the recollection damage matters a lot as well. So we really want to be focusing on trying to get this killed as quickly as possible. What I do here, because I'm going to be overloaded with Maelstrom, is I do actually do back-to-backs, Elemental Blast and Earthquakes, just to get rid of the Maelstrom so I can then do another Chain Lightning with my Stormkeeper. So the first one here, I'm going to use my Elemental Blast, then Chain Lightning. I will say this is a great place to use your Ancestral Guidance. I didn't mention the first one. The first one was during the Fire Breath. That's a good place to use it. But here I'm using my Ancestral Guidance just because just to kind of help stabilize the rest of the raid a little bit. So here I'm going to be using Elemental Blast and then immediately into an Earthquake again to get rid of as much Maelstrom as I can. Another Chain Lightning, another Elemental Blast and Earthquake just to get rid of that Maelstrom, and then one last Chain Lightning to get that last Stormkeeper Chain Lightning. Again, all that damage is still worth doing. You're also cleaving the boss that way, and you're also getting a ton of Maelstrom for that Elemental Blast. It's not really cheesing there. We're still getting a lot of funnel to go into that empty recollection. So here we just want to be full focusing, killing this recollection because this thing needs to die now at this point. We were a little bit slow on it, but fortunately we still got plenty of time to finish it off. And this is how we're going to be transitioning into phase 3, which is the hardest part of the fight by far. So, jumping into phase 3, I'm going to go ahead and use my Spirit Walker's Grace just to give me a little bit extra movement speed because, as you can see here, I have the weak aura telling me that it's going to be the reset version from the Evoker, so I'm not going to actually be punished for using it here. It just gives me a little bit extra movement speed. We all go down together, and again, like I said, this is all about synchronization. As soon as we say go, everyone moves in together, and we all go down into the same down phase at the same time and have a nice little clump of those holes. If you start seeing them spawn before your stacks come up for you to be sent down, just move forward so that you're not accidentally killing yourself right there. So here we're going to be focusing on collecting as many of these little shards as we can to get the haste and the movement speed, as well as these 3 things. That is what brings us back up. So one thing I will say is be very careful about these holes at this point, because now they're going to be all over the platform and there's going to be a ton of them in phase 3, and they can really be hard to see sometimes, especially if they are in these white circles. It can be very difficult to see. You have plenty of time, so make sure you're not rushing yourself and making sure you're double checking before you touch anything that you're not going to accidentally get clipped by one of these holes. I definitely died a couple times on progress because of exactly that. I just missed seeing a hole on the ground. It can be very deceiving, so be aware of that. So here I've got 10 seconds left before I will get killed, and I just want to come up at around like 8 seconds. So right here I can just kind of chill and just wait for the time when we need to come up, and I'm just going to grab one more spark to reset the time on the buff. And now I'm going to wait for the last second and then come up and we can start phase 3. So here, a whole bunch of things are going to happen. And this is why phase 3 can be very difficult, especially when you first get into it, is because there's so many mechanics that happen at the same time. And I'll do my best to explain it. So I'll talk about what happens to me here first, and then we'll go back and talk about everyone else and what typically will happen on a pull-by-pull basis. So I get targeted with the Hurtling Barrage. That is these lines from the edges of the room here. And I start moving out because that's also part of what everyone else is doing. We'll get back to that in a second. And I think that this line is on me. But at this point here, when I realize the line is no longer turning, I realize that this one is not the one that was pointed at me. So I have to quickly figure out which one it is pointed at. And I see it's this one here. You do not want these lines to be going through the raid. You want them off to the side, and you can see the other person's over here. They're in a good position, but I'm not. So I need to take this one not in the raid. I need to be going out this way. Somehow I managed to just barely dodge that one and managed to get it out of the raid before it goes off. So if you do get the Hurtling Barrage on you, make sure you're taking that out of the raid. All right, and now what everyone else is doing, which you typically will do on a pull-to-pull basis here, is you want to come up and get to one side of the room, coming out of phase 2, and as you're coming up, and what will come out is a whole bunch of mechanics at once. You're going to be getting a black hole, and you're going to be getting bombs that will spawn on the ranged group. The person with the Void Zone is going to continue to stay with the ranged group, the entire time until the very end here. So the first bomb gets spawned directly on top of the range group. We all will want to move over to the right to spawn the second bomb. And there it is. There's the second bomb. And then the person and everyone else with the void zone will move into melee and drop the void zone directly onto melee so that everyone soaks it and no one dies here. So that was done perfectly. You start over here, you move to the side, and then you move in. You're just making a little triangle, so you're not getting extra ticks from the bombs as they spawn. So very important to make sure that you're moving as a group there as well. So I just did the hurtling barrage thing, so now I'm going to be moving back in. And at this point, I can now move to the center of the room, and now you have a place you can finally breathe. So the beginning of phase 3 is very, very hectic. A lot of mechanics that are going on right there. Just make sure you're taking your time to see what mechanic you have. If you see the bombs, make sure that after you see the first one, which can be very hard to see, you're moving over to the right side, and then you're moving in. You're just basically making a little part of a triangle here. All right, so after the void zone goes off, you move to the center of the room, and now you can just focus on doing as much damage to the boss as you can. With this hide mechanic, this Scouring Eternity, the line that you're supposed to hide in here goes on for a very long time. It might be the entire length of the platform. I'm not 100% sure. But even if you can't see it, if your feet aren't getting constantly pushed back, it means that you're still in that line. So you can see I'm like the lines, you can see it up here, and you can't really see it where I am right here, but I'm still in it because of the fact that I'm not getting pushed back. And that's a good way to tell if you're in it or not. So here I'm just going to be focusing as much damage as I can into the boss as I can, because this Scouring Eternity is actually like the chill point of the fight, where you can kind of take a break and just focus on doing damage and not have to worry about moving around or anything. So really try to make sure you're planting your feet and not getting like too distracted with trying to do any kind of micro movements here. All right, so after the first Scouring Eternity, we have another overlap of mechanics. So here we are going to bait the Infinite Duress as well as the Void Zone. We all want to be kind of stacked up right here. The Infinite Duress people are going to stack on top of each other, and we have a lock gate. You can just barely kind of see it right down here. There's going to be a lock gate right where they are. The second they get dispelled, they just have to click on the gate. So as soon as they get knocked straight up into the air, they click the gate and they go through. Us, everyone else, we will be standing in front of them in a line. You can just have this nice line right here that makes it very easy to see. We want to be right next to them, and the second they get dispelled, we all get knocked backwards at once. So this will take you a while to get down, because everyone has to kind of be in sync here. Everyone has to be perfectly stacked so that you're not going all over the place and not getting knocked off to the sides or anything like that. You really want to be forming a line the best you can. But there's the dispel. They take the portal. We get knocked back. We all soak the black hole at the same time, and then we move off to the left. And then if these swirls do this weird stuff like it did on our pole, you just continue moving out a little bit more to the left, and that's fine. And now we're again focusing on Sark. He does spawn ads during that period of time. You can use your Storm. If you have a Stormkeeper charge like I did, you can just use that to get a little bit more Maelstrom, as well as help kill some of those ads a little bit. I typically just use Chain Lightning, but mainly still focusing on Sarkareth at this point. This will also be my next Windrush Totem coming up here. Just kind of focusing on the boss here. And then the next mechanic out of this is bombs again. So the second we see that first bomb, which is why I put the Windrush Totem down, we move off to the left. And then as soon as the next one spawns, which I think spawned directly on top of someone. It was the person who, oh no, they just spawned directly on top of each other. Yeah, so we want to move a little bit faster than that so that you're not spawning the bombs like on top of each other. That makes it a little bit harder for the bomb people. But make sure you're moving the second that that bomb comes out so that you're not stacking those up. And then here we are just chilling again. So again, once you can do that infinite duress dispel and get that down, you get to another chill point here where you're just focusing on the boss, trying to do as much damage as you possibly can, and focusing this as we come close to the end of the fight. We got like one more hard thing to do, but everything else is fairly easy. Again, another Scouring Eternity. This is the chill point of the fight. You just want to watch your feet so you're not touching any of those swirls or anything like that when they come out. But for the most part, just focusing on killing the boss here. So again, watching those feet for those swirls. If you get the black hole, you're going to move off to the left side and just die. This is the first sacrifice one. However, if you are a warlock or just one of the broken classes, like right here we have a Retribution Paladin using Bubble to help with this black hole soak, just taking a little bit of pressure off of the warlock, and the warlock will actually live this because they're crazy. As you can see there, just managing just barely to live through that sacrificial one with just one person soaking. We also get a infinite duress that will go right next to it and get dispelled, and then we start moving into the boss, but not quite yet. We are going to get one more bomb set here. So we want to make sure we're not baiting them on top of the group over here. We want to just bait them off into the range so no one's taking any extra stacks. And after those are picked up, this is probably the hardest part of the fight, in my opinion, in terms of, at least it was for us, of just getting everyone synced one more time to go into the down phase. So at this point, if you've done everything right, you should have 5 stacks to the debuff. If you have anything less than 5 stacks of the debuff at this point, then you need to get hit by one of these swirls right now. If you do not, then you will probably die when you do this next part of the step here. So if you are at between 1 and 4 stacks, or even less, if you have 0 to 5 stacks, go ahead and get hit by one of these swirls right now. It is very important. You need to be at least at 5 stacks here. What we're going to be doing is our raid leader is going to be looking for one of these swirls for everyone to get in. We want a fresh one so that everyone has enough time to get to it, and we're all going to stand on top of it. So this one just spawned. We use a world marker to place, to kind of call everyone to it, and we're all going to go stand on it. This does not do anything until these little teardroplet looking things hit the ground. So you just need to go and stand in it and then wait. And you can see it right there. There's the teardrop. The second it hits, we're all going to get pushed to 10 stacks, and you'll notice we do have one person at 4 stacks. Because it only gives you 5 stacks, they only go to 9, which means that they're standing on a hole, which means that they will instantly die, or they're left upstairs and they'll instantly die there. So making sure that if you are less than 5 stacks, you really need to stand in a swirl before that point too. Here, again, you do not need to rush. You can chill. Do not throw at this point. Just chill, relax, take a deep breath, run around, grab these circles, make sure that you're not standing in the void zones, make sure you don't run through those. Again, it's not a huge deal if you don't get to 10 stacks, but with Ghost Wolf, it does make it fairly easy. And then wait for the call to come up. And I typically wait just a second longer for this one because, as you can see, a lot of damage goes out right away. I came up a little bit late, and now this is the burn part of the fight. We just need to kill Sarkareth at this point. There's not a whole lot to deal with at this point. It's just living to this point, which can be difficult. Here, we want to soak this black hole right here. We're going to all get into it. You can sacrifice this one depending on your strategy, but we have everyone up and we're all right here. We can just soak it real quick. So we're all going to take a little step into that, and now we're just focusing straight on Sarkareth, trying to get as much damage as we can one last time into Sarkareth, and then we need to kill him basically right here. We've got one more Scouring Eternity, but we have plenty of damage at this point, and we are able to kill him. So again, this fight is all about synchronization, about trying to be as pixel perfectly stacked throughout the fight when you need to be as possible. As I've said before, being able to be coordinated like that to bait all of those circles on the ground there and just throughout the fight is going to be super important. So that's pretty much the whole fight. I think I covered every bit in detail, going step by step of the things that you can do. Just make sure that you're actually using your defensives at the points that I mentioned them. You can kind of use them anywhere else that you want to. I believe I do use Astral Shift one more time towards the end. Yeah, just like towards the end of the fight, if you're close to a kill, just go ahead and use your Astral Shift. Just try to keep yourself from dying. If he does get phased one more time, where he jumps up one more time, you can survive that with Astral Shift. So keep that in mind. Just try to live as best you can. Make sure you're getting a lot of usage out of Spirit Walker's Grace. It's an amazing cooldown that allows you to keep more uptime than pretty much anything else in the game when it comes to being able to cast while moving. So make sure you're getting plenty of usage out of that. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know in the comments below. But other than that, guys, I hope this was helpful. And yeah, if you enjoyed the video, if it helped you out at all, please give the video a thumbs up. I stream at Twitch at twitch.tv/Ridmark, so feel free to give me a follow there if you made it to this point in the video and you're still watching. But other than that, guys, I hope you guys have a good one, and I will see you in the next video.